right, so good afternoon. Welcome, Priya, to this event, Leaders and Libraries. Thank you for accepting the invitation and joining the force. Before we get started and get into the conversation on a powerful book that you have chosen, let me introduce you to the audience. So, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, whichever part of the world you are in. Welcome to Leaders and Libraries event. You have had 25 illustrious leaders from the world of HR, OD, business talk about a book that has inspired their journey. We have yet another guest today, Priya Malhotra, a certified coach, a seasoned global HR professional in the experience of OD, talent management, learning and development, whatever falls under the umbrella of HR. Very passionate about women to succeed. Also a mentor with Sherry Blair Foundation. That's a great amount of work I'm sure must be happening there because I know a fair bit of info about that foundation. So very happy to see that there, Priya. An evangelist of digital learning. So which means all those byte learning, mobile learning, all that stuff, self-learning, etc. is something that she completely believes in using the powerful science of instructional design methodology. And she's also an author in the making, if I can say that, or an author who's going to get the book out. And it would be a great opportunity if I could be one person who could release the book the day it comes out. So I'm just giving
I look forward to that.
She works with Aditya Birla Group as a program director, enabling leadership development for the entire group. I'm also an avid reader. Welcome, Priya, on this event. Thank you for joining the force.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you for the energy you bring to this event. I was really excited and inspired to be part of it. And let me also say that I'm here today as a reader and not as a leader. So, my personal capacity of as they are called, voracious readers. You helped me pick up a book that has inspired me in many ways, and that is a clear part of some of the work that I do. So very happy to be having this chat with you.
Lovely to hear that. And the book is a fabulous book that you have picked up. One of my all-time favorite because the vision statement of the leadership elements, my organization itself is we challenge the immunity to change in leaders, organizations, and communities. And this book is fabulous. So before I expose this book a little while later in this conversation, let's start with the first question. So Priya for books and books for Priya, how do these phrases go together? Let's start with that interesting question.
So, I am the proverbial kitabi kida. I am the proverbial voracious reader. I was the child that was found hidden in a corner with a stack of books up her side. I am the person you see in airports taking out a physical book from her bag and reading through a 9-hour flight. I am the person waiting at bus stops or waiting in queues or having her lunch or dinner with a book by her side. But I'm mostly a fiction reader. Let me also say these are demands of work that I read some leadership books, and the immunity to change book stands for this reason because it really bridges the line between being an easy, comfortable, appealing read and putting out a really deep and worthwhile tool to explore.
Sure.
Out of my early childhood and teenage memories are associated with books. I grew up in a small city, and I would like to think that I developed a wider world view because there was this whole big wide world there to explore.
Yeah.
To me. So, whether it was a love for languages, whether it is a love for, different cuisines, whether it is a love for different cultures, all of that was made possible by books.
By books.
I was and remain a hungry reader. So that's about books for me.
Lovely. So the books kind of became the gateway for you to go beyond your small town and look at the world and what are the possibilities available there, right?
Oh yes, definitely. Books were the wings that I had in that time to help me really understand the world as a much bigger place.
Right.
Develop a sense of what was going outside. Develop a sense of multitudes and complexity. Develop a sense of multiple perspectives. Place in the world. So I think all of that was brought to me by books. My mother is a voracious reader herself, so we often buy off of her library, and she borrows off of mine. My brother reads a lot as well. So yeah, we're a family of readers.
My God, don't tell me you were born in a library as against people like us who are born in a hospital. And then your mother goes around and looks for some books and suddenly finds a kid lying on the edge of
That's a good plot line. I'm going to.
I found you behind a couple of books. Good one, good one. So tell me, from those fiction reading, as you kind of made a transition to leadership books, management books, as profession warranted you to do that. How did books play a significant role in your own growth, Priya, as a leader that you are today?
So Rajiv, one of my favorite tools for self-growth is journaling, and I enjoy books that talk about ways to reflect, ways to explore oneself. I am I'm a how do this a big picture thinker. So models and theories appeal to me, but not in their textbook formats. About how was this brought to life? How did this work for these particular people? How did this come alive in an organization? So any sorts of books that take those paths, those are the kind of management leadership books I like to read.
Lovely.
Not with mota textbooks in my college time. I have a photographic memory to some extent, so it was easy for me to recall what I was reading, but I never enjoyed any of those books. And then you transition to books that give you a lot of gyan. Those don't appeal to me either. But a good mix of this, so whether it is Stumbling Upon Happiness, whether it is around being a resonant leader, whether it is the adaptive leadership book, whether it is the immunity to change book, How Women Rise, some of these books that are easy reads, they give you deep insights, they give you something to work through. Those are the books that I find appealing.
Which are very real and applicable to our way of life and personal education, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Somebody had told me, I don't like the Karan Johar kind of books. I said, what does it mean?
Oh, no, that's not the fiction I read either. It has to be on some, award list. I'm a little snooty like that, any fiction that I will pick up. And now, of course, since time is at a premium, I only pick up books that have been shortlisted for either the Booker or the Pulitzer, or, so I want to see what's going on. Saying what are the points of view that are getting appreciated around the world.
Lovely.
Either that or it has to have wonderful cover art. I am a sucker for cover art.
Is it?
Beautiful picture and I will pick up the book.
That way the cover art of this book is not very enterprising.
No, it isn't.
So among all the books that you have read, any specific reason why this book stands out as one of the inspiring ones for you? The Immunity to Change by Keegan and Lassie have done a fabulous job here. Why this book?
So two reasons. One is there's nothing to not like about the book. It's an easy read. It's an easy tool. It's quite transformational in the way that it allows you new avenues for thinking. Great concepts that make a lot of sense. This book makes for a great conversation everywhere with people who are learned and deep, and even with people who are just, you're shooting the breeze with, even, these concepts are simple enough to know. I was fascinated with the concept of the gas and the brake, one foot on the gas, one on the brake. The second reason for picking up this book simply was that the title to me was intriguing. Right. So, the piece around immunities and change, and, I picked it up thinking, okay, it's a change management thing, but it's not a change management thing. It's a self-management thing.
Correct.
So the one short read, and there's some wonderful examples, very relatable stories in the book that I quite enjoyed. So that's why I picked this up. One of the most intuitive reads for me.
Yeah, I mean, true. What you said makes sense because it's got tools, page after page after page, something you just tear off and actually go and try it work or in personal life, and it will work. I think beautiful work done with the authors there. All right, so let's kind of delve into a couple of powerful concepts of the book, because technically you would need a 2-day workshop to actually delve into this entire book if you would, right? Author talks about a very powerful concept called mental complexity, and he ties this beautifully with performance. Please help the listeners to not look at it as a complex connection and make it simple for them. How do you see this connection of mental complexity with performance?
See, let me first start by telling you how that appealed to me. So, I often say, and it's often said, that awareness brings the energy for change. So becoming aware of this is one of the ways in which, mental complexity is mentioned. So your adulthood in some sense gets mentioned like this. Observing that in myself, observing that for people that you look up to and you inspire, gives you a
Right.
frame of reference to think about.
Right.
It also throws up interesting questions in the organizational context of saying, how do hierarchies and leaders work? So if there are leaders at more complex levels, of mental maturity, who are leading teams with, let's say, a lower level of mental complexity, how does that work out and mean for our culture versus the other way around? So around the time that I read this book, I also became familiar with the vertical leadership concept. And the piece around expanding your capacity, that really appealed to me, because that's the way that learning can really impact the mind. So if I'm relating it back to how, traditionally in India, created learning in our younger generation. So whether you look at a Panchatantra story, so we tell people perspectives, we tell people outcomes. So whether it's Vikram or Betal, the outcomes, the linked outcomes are clear, and the children or the young adults are expected to accept the consequences of the action they pick.
Correct.
So this learning by choice, I quite like that. So when you look at expanding the capacity of the brain to then measure intelligence by that was very, very fascinating.
Lovely.
Whether in the world X number of people are at a maturity, certain maturity, what does that mean? I don't know whether I have enough information or knowledge to talk about that. But certainly, each one of us and our communities will think that we're a level of maturity higher than what we are actually at, and that in itself is very, very interesting.
True.
Around what it talks about mental.
They do. Yeah.
So by the time you get to self-authoring and self-actualized, selves, the kind of learning and the way that you do it it changes. So for me, being a learning professional, it was interesting to know in that context. It gives you a new language, this whole mental complexity model. It gives you a new language to talk about development, to talk about cultural and social proclivities, about why some people dig their heels in on something, and it also talks about what are the anchors people pick up for themselves and why. Why are people anchored around religion so much or nationalism so much, whereas some people are anchored around philosophy and skills so much. So a deeper understanding of the world is what I would say.
Yeah, I like that cultural proclivity you spoke about. It kind of gives you why somebody's so affiliated to a certain element so strongly, right? And why they don't feel about something else as strong as they do for the other one.
Yeah.
How do you advise the young minds to interpret this and help themselves in their own performance?
See, like I said, sometimes a new lens of looking at things really helps. So telling people that adulthood may not only be chronological, it's about what your experiences tell you and how you react to those experiences, reflect, and what do you become of it. So, it's not just one concept that will create some sort of a learning or change in people. So marrying that with various things, saying, the path you choose and the perspectives you pick up will elevate you to a certain level, and then there is a certain level of performance expected from it. So I haven't really done much work organizationally around this with younger people, but, with the teams that I work with and people that I talk to, this whole piece of saying you can't keep pouring more water if you do not the vessel, I think that piece really, really works. So you have to expand, change the shape of the vessel to accommodate more water. That's how your mental complexity changes. Your capacity grows. Capability development to capacity enhancement. That's the piece that I talk about.
I think where the lifelong learning as a trait or a character also plays a very significant role, right? To be able to convert the shape of the vessel itself, right?
Yeah.
You may have the willingness to take more volumes of water, but if I can't hold it, that desire just remains as a desire. I can never convert it into reality, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That takes me beautifully to the next question, where he says, when the immune system becomes part of the problem. Now, I was figuring out what happens when an immune system becomes part of the problem. What is he trying to communicate to us as leaders? I would like to hear this from a leadership perspective.
See, everybody likes to build a cocoon that they feel comfortable in. The immune system becomes part of the problem when your blind spots keep getting reinforced, and it creates a sense of reality for you that you feel safe and successful in. So
Correct.
you actually bargained to create for yourself a system that makes you feel in control and successful. You have blocked your vision of an alternate reality that could possibly hold much more potential for you. Encased yourself in a reality over which you feel a sense of control.
Okay.
So immunity is and an immune system becomes part of the problem because, as Bob and Liza say in the book, we fool ourselves. We can be the best judge of how we want to improve. So, as you grow in leadership levels, there are also fewer and fewer people who will really give you that valid feedback unasked.
Okay.
That will point you to areas that you or your organization or your systems need to change. We need to pay as much attention to the problem as we need to pay to the solution. But building this immunity takes away our sight from the problem. So, when we go further into the book and we talk about, how some of those immunities are broken down, that we will talk about how only the mindset level work cannot help. You have to go deeper and see where that's coming from. What is it that you need to break down? So, these immunities become an anxiety management system for leadership and leadership teams. They become a sense of identity. They become a sense of roots. These are our organizational norms. These are my team's values. Whereas all you're doing is protecting the known reality so that you feel a sense of control over it. First step with any work around immunities needs to be at that level to help people see what they're protecting, really.
That's a very interesting answer. However, I have one question if I can ask you extended to this question, though I wanted to go to the next one. We talk about work within your strength space. The more you do on your strength, you become better of the same strength, and you reach excellence and all that you've heard about. Somewhere me doing that within that zone, would you still see it as an immune system trying to build within around me and trying to stay in a cocoon, or would you say that it's working on the strength and Rajiv is doing something better in his own area of work and become the best of that? How would the environment interpret it?
See, my view around that, Rajiv, would be that change cannot exist in a vacuum. You need to be inspired to make that change, and you will feel inspired to make that change. In fact, this was something I would have said during this conversation anyway. And I've posted about this on LinkedIn, that my biggest learning around immunity to change through the book and through the work, that I've experienced is, unless you feel a personal pain. So change that you want to initiate, people tell you these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. Even at top leadership level, the system will give you some feedback, and then you pick up that feedback and you want to change. But until you feel a personal pain or a personal discomfort in that state of being, your energy for the change will not come. And that's something we've experienced, when we talk about this concept to a lot of people, and I've spoken to a lot of practitioners, and they also feedback that unless people pick up their own personal pain areas, the change is not going to happen. So you can keep on working on your strengths, knowing your strengths, and that's all great. But if there is a derailer that is pulling you down significantly and you're not aware of it, or you're not feeling the pain of it, or you're not dealing with the pain of it, then any amount of work you do on your success will be like, pushing a wall to remove it.
I think you what you say makes a lot of sense, Priya. I like this perspective because I come from the city of startups. And you pick up any startup, the journey started with identifying a pain, and that pain was experienced by the founders and co-founders. They said, "Yaar, kuch to karna hai."
Precisely.
As simple as Mustafa of ID, who lives in the community next to mine, you know the story behind it.
Yeah.
Today's 1,200 crore organization. So
yeah.
It was just about hygiene, idli, dosa batter to be served.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense. I love that perspective. Thank you for highlighting that. I'm really impressed with that perspective. All right. So as the author takes you through the book, he also talks about moving beyond this immune system and problem thing. He talks about the need for an individual to identify that one big thing, which helps people to move from that insights to creating an impact. So I like that word insight and impact together, because it was very interesting, because till I read the book many years back, I had a equation of, not equation, a transition of information to insight.
Hmm.
Now, when I added information to insight and then insight to impact, it added further weight to the earlier understanding of the sentence. So, how did you identify the big thing in your life, Priya? And how, one instance that you can give for the young minds where you made this big thing as an opportunity to move from insights to an impact that you created?
It took me many iterations.
Sure.
Iterations to arrive at the one big thing.
The,
Because there are a lot of aspects in your life that you constantly feel, you should improve. This should be better. I should be more like this, let me try and be that. But none of those are causing any real pain. And so therefore,
mm,
you know, the more you keep going back, see, one thing that I learned from the book is the more solid your first column of the one big thing is, the more impactful your whole journey through the tool is going
I
to be.
agree.
So it took me many iterations of understanding myself. And okay, I kept on asking myself, okay, why do I want to do this? Why is this important? Where is this hurting? What is happening? And then eventually, I think I picked up an area around which I saw some significant progress. And हम लोग कहते हैं MBA language में कि वो मुझे चमका, it suddenly chumked me that okay, yeah, this is it, sort of a thing. So perhaps I should share. I always prided myself on the uniqueness of my ideas. I am an ideator, original thinker is
Right.
what I prided myself on. And through the iterations and through the work, the insight to impact was, moving that identity from a purely innovator mindset to an innovator collaborator mindset.
Beautiful.
Ideas have a price, and ideas are just ideas unless they are executed well. So I would pride myself on being an original thinker only, and now I pride myself on being an original thinker who can put those ideas into practice. So that move from innovator to collaborator, and the insights it threw up about what it means to me, original, out there, dazzling, what does that mean? So some of that work was very, very interesting for me.
Lovely, lovely. So with that multiple iteration that you had, you must have tasted some of the things which were talking about what you really want to do in life. Some things would have told you, no, this is not what I want to do. Let me take a step back. Some reflection, then 2 steps forward would have happened. If I can ask you to kind of rewind that journey a little bit, what are 2-3 things that you would advise the young minds to start doing so that they're able to identify that one big thing early in their own journey of leadership? If you ask me today, that one big thing that I identify, or the mojo or the flow or whatever you want to talk about, given a chance to rewind, I would have loved to have it earlier in my life. All of us would have had. What are 3 or 4 things you can advise?
So one learning that I had was that when I started my self-work around this, I started with the textbook approach of asking significant people, saying, what should I change about myself?
Okay.
And, people really invest in you when they give you feedback. So I got a variety of feedback from many people. And so, again, you take the approach of saying, okay, what is the common thing that many people are saying? And that's the thing that I should pick up and work on. That when I was in that iteration, I realized that although people are saying this about me, this is not what is causing me pain. That only one individual had pointed out, that had really hit me hard. So I'm like, okay, there is energy around this. So this is where the pain is. So I didn't, I recognize that that's the piece that I probably need to work on first, because it created some sort of energy response in me. So that's the one thing that I would advise. Don't go by textbook picture perfect
feedback
what you should be and where you should go. Pick up areas that hit hard at you. No man is an island. Do involve people around you who love you and who will invest in you and who are investing in growth. To check with them, what could make you a better collaborator, what could make you a better contributor, what could make you better at whatever it is that you pride yourself on. So try and get feedback by asking the right questions. So asking people, what should I become better at, is a very blue sky question, and that probably won't give you the kind of answer that will be super useful, is what I would advise. The other thing I would advise is, when you fill in your column 1, which is the one thing, keep on going back to, why is this important? Is this a result, or is this an action, or is this an outcome? what am I writing about? Is this a theme that I have identified, or is this a result? So for example, there's a very famous, this immunity to change work is largely used in weight loss journeys for people. And I was reading the blog of one of such individuals who had said that, I first put down my goal as this is what I want to change, lose 20 kgs by the end of this year. And then through the iterations, I came to realize that that is an output that I expect. What I really want to change are my eating habits and my relationship with food. One item is I will make healthy choices, not I will lose 20 kg, because that's an action. That's not an intent. So I would advise younger people that are picking this up to, focused on some of that.
Very powerful, very powerful. So I'm going to ask you, tell the audience, what is that one big thing?
For me?
You found out, yeah?
Yeah, so I told you, I found out about my pride and my innovator, mindset.
That's the one biggest thing.
So that was my.
So every behavior, every action of yours kind of gets driven from that.
Yeah, so that was one area that I picked up, was also causing a bit of frustration for me at some points. I have these great ideas, but nothing ever happens to them. We don't run with many of them, and that was causing a bit of dissonance. So I examined where that dissonance was coming from, and you can't be head and shoulders above everybody or different from everybody at all times. And the whole working with people was an important thing. Collaboration with people was an important. So that's an area that I worked on.
Yeah, sometime back I was listening to a talk by someone, and he made a very powerful point. So through that entire podcast, one thing just struck very strong. He said this in Hindi, so I'll say this in Hindi itself. वो एक चीज जिसके नहीं रहने से और बाकी सारी चीजें रहने से क्या आपकी जिंदगी ठीक है क्या?
Cost of change.
One thing not there, but everything is being fine. Are you okay with it? Ask yourself this one fundamental question. And if the answer is a resounding and amplifying no, then you still have to go and figure out that one big thing. What change? And he says run behind it like a dog that runs behind the bus.
Yeah. No. I think I completely get where you're coming from, because that's the one thing that you will eventually come to. But to uncover that one thing, there are layers that you need to put on. So the expectation cannot be that in your very first engagement with this tool or with this book, you'll really land at that key thing that is going to help you. Which is why I said, iterations are important.
Iterations.
Working on some of these things, saying, okay, when you're peeling the layers, what are the things that are important to you or discovering? Then when you actually come back, later in the tool to your big assumptions and your competing commitments, that will anyway uncover a lot of other things for you.
Eventually.
So it's all like a linked process. But yeah, the one big thing should be the thing that causes you pain, and the cost of change is quite high. If you didn't change that, you are paying a high cost.
True. And I'm able to relate to what you're saying, Priya, that the bit that you said that the book has got tools, and you spoke about iteration. If you connect these two, the book gives you multiple tools to help you iterate multiple times.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when you iterate, you can't go astray. You still stay within the boundaries of that template and iterate. Then कि यार सही जा रहा है.
Yeah. Also, what I like about it is that there are no rules per se. There is guideline. There's very gentle nudging to say, okay, try it this way. Here is an example of somebody who did it this way. Here is an example of somebody who did it another way. So you'll find the book littered with, maps of different people, of teams, problems people were facing, of how different people were able to articulate their issues. That is what inspires you to work at it. Which is why I said it's a very easy read. It's almost like walking a journey together. It doesn't feel like you have to set aside mental time to sit and engage with the book. It's not like that.
You're right. I agree. So let me move you to the next question. The authors also talk about unlocking your potential, right? And talk about the 3 necessary ingredients. How do you look at potential as a word which has been used and abused for many generations, but I'll still hear it from you, from the author's perspective? And tell us one occasion where you unlock that potential.
So the authors say that, that they give three tools to unlock potential. They talk about the gut, which is really, I was talking about the pain point. So when it hits that, that's where you get the energy and motivation to really be driven to make that change. The second thing they talk about is the head and heart. And this is very close to me because I ran a consulting organization for 4 years whose name was Head and Heart Coaching. So the connect between the feeling and the thinking levels to fully engage in the work of discovery, cognitively and intuitively, so that it appeals on both of those domains. That's the second element the authors talk about. And the third element that authors talk about is the hands, which is the mindset level work. Now, the mindset and the behavior level work is what a lot of individuals and organizations get stuck at, because that's the easy win. That's the low hang. So they'll say, we want to work on mindsets or we want to work on behaviors. And individuals that work around this will say, okay, great. This is the level at which I need to do this work. And then they are confused why they are not able to stick to the discoveries they got, or really implement any experiments that they had designed, or really forward in the journey. And there's an example of this also, in the book about Peter and his team, and how they took it from a very cognitive perspective and weren't able to follow through on what they had done.
Correct.
So unless you have an interplay of all of these things, you understand what's hitting you in the gut, what's impacting you, what is it that you really need to do something about, and what will it mean, in terms of work for you. So unless you understand, it's almost like the iceberg. You have to understand at the top level, what are you doing behavior and mindset wise, but where is it all coming from, and it all getting triggered, and finally what will it contribute to? Because eventually, Rajiv, what you are doing through this work is also changing your lens. When you're changing your mindset, you're discarding everything about your self concept that you had carried on for so long, painting it in a different hue. So some of your assumptions get validated, and you're happy that some anchors will continue in your life, but it will also mean stopping something and creating something new. And of adulthood or mental complexity that you're at when you're engaging in this work, will also contribute a lot to how do you feel about that. Do you feel disoriented? Do you feel like it's a rebirth? Do you feel it's a season of discovery, or do you feel the ground has been taken away from under your feet?
True.
Those pieces are important in the interplay of this. So the praise of this book is that it's very simple, easy, very intuitive, and that I think goes against it also, in the sense that the tool appears to be very simplistic, which it is not. It's a fairly deep and complex tool, requiring some deep reflection, requiring examination and conversations with yourself and others. Although the four column tool is very simplistic, so that's where this whole interplay becomes important and connects up with the other thing. So you asked me about potential and what I mean about potential. Harmonizing some of these things, a harmony within yourself of saying, okay, here's what I want to work at, and I'm fairly committed to it, and I'm committed to then going with it wherever this work takes me.
Correct.
I've discovered the assumptions. I'm willing to go deeper into where did they get formed, and I'm willing to do it in a non-judgmental way. I am willing to give that up and then take on another baggage of saying, oh, somebody said that to me at that time, or that experience happened, and
carry that with me. Correct.
Yeah. So doing that in a non-judgmental way, doing that in a mindful way, doing that in a committed way. So all of that requires a high level of integrity, a high level of commitment, a high level of resolve, and then of course will come from the reflections. So that is how potential will get released. So eventually, once you've worked through the tool, crossed those stages, that is what you get. You get freedom, you get release.
True.
So from being unconsciously hooked, you become consciously released. That's where you're.
I love that. Yeah, the consciously being released is such a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
My God. I mean, you
work through things to get to that stage.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly you realize the kind of possibilities in front of you. You suddenly are able to touch and feel the expanded, amplified potential that is there within you, that can go and grab those possibilities and make a change. All that suddenly become pretty crystal clear in your own head, which was all like a cobweb before that.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that you feel resolved and okay with yourself. So okayness,
beautiful point. Beautiful.
A very powerful concept. So feeling this okayness with yourself of wherever, even if you move 10 paces in the journey instead of 100 that somebody else may have moved, that okayness is very, very important to get for well-being.
It's very calming and settling in the head, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You no more know that best is not trying to become the best of yourself, not the best against someone else, right? All those such things don't happen in the head anymore at all.
that's what I have experienced through some of this work. That's what some of my associates have experienced through some of this work. I'm sure other readers of the book would also have their own experiences to add on. That's a state that's eminently achievable.
That's very, very confident giving statement. Young minds, that's achievable, guys. That's what Priya is saying. So please go pick up this book, whichever journey or wherever you are in your leadership growth. This book is fabulous. It applies to a first-time manager, pretty much like the first 90 days book. This applies to a senior manager. It applies to somebody with 18, 19 years experience, or you may be a CEO. It applies. It's eternally
I would say that
relevant.
it applies to individuals for individual growth.
Complete.
Role you're in, because when you bring your whole self to your role,
Yeah.
this allows you to work on your whole self. And so what are you contributing? Then your membership to a team or to an organization or to a committee or to a larger system is secondary. The first, this whole personal change and growth, that's what it's very, very important for.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so the next question is on two words, which individually itself is a concept by itself. Adaptive change, what the authors talk about, right? First of all, what are one or two tips that you would want to give for the leaders and young minds primarily to become adaptive? And with that mind, how do I work on the change opportunity and then display what the author is talking about? Help us with very simple, applicable behaviors or tools that you have tried and
I'll give you two things. One is the recognition and the acknowledgement that we are limited by our own perspectives.
Okay.
Often, if we stay within the same circle, engage with the same people, often get our blind spots reinforced. So ensuring that there is somebody who's possibly outside of your innermost circle, somebody who can keep you in the zone of that reflective work. That's very important. To enlist that support is very important. Okay. Whether that's through a coach, through a practitioner, through a friend, through a colleague who has done similar kind of work, or somebody who's read the book with you, just to kind of be honest. Second thing, it's important, whether you're a leader or, for any other memberships of systems that you have, you need to be aware of the agenda that's driving you as much as you need to be aware of the agendas that you are driving. That's what the Bob and Liz are saying. To be aware of the agenda that's driving you as much as the agenda that you're driving. And to be able to be aware of the agenda that's driving you, you need to make changes to your meaning-making mechanism. Mindset work happens. So you make changes to your meaning-making mechanism. That is what impacts your behavior, because now you become more aware of what you're putting out. And this will be possible through focused observation. So one is, be aware that you're limiting your own perspective. So and then focused observation to see, how am I coming across? What am I doing? What are my proclivities? What are my triggers? Focused observation. And then you're, engaging with your meaning-making mechanism to eventually impact your behaviors and mindsets. Yeah. This is how the circle grows. So there's some sort of risk involved in this, because when you work with your meaning-making mechanisms, there is risk inherent in it. But the payoff of that risk is a huge amount of freedom. We were just talking about it, the release, the freedom. That's really important. So creating freedom for yourself is what you will be able to achieve by engaging in these processes. The beauty of this concept also, Rajiv, is that it doesn't ask you to give up everything that you held dear for so long. It simply recognize it. So after recognizing it, you may still feel that I cannot give this up. This makes me who I am, and I want to protect it. And then, another iteration will start at some point. I know. It allows you to keep what is dear to you. It will not strip you naked, of everything that was protective. So I find that really, really beautiful. So adaptive changes you mentioned, by their very nature are things that you need to adopt to create solutions for. Adopt to whatever are particular circumstances for you that you have made meanings out of. So it's very personal in a personal change sense. Again, if you apply to organizations, in my limited experience, I would simply say that even for organization, adaptive changes would mean first breaking away from the mental models that have served you so far. Correct. Being to stick your neck out and take a risk in thinking differently and then enlisting the team to say, okay, we've often reacted to these situations in this way. How about we observe, where we are coming from, what's keeping back, examining our competing commitments and then moving to risk-taking, freedom,
I know. So among the three things that you said forms a circle, which do you think calls for highest level of maturity and effort?
Focused observation. We are often blind to our own behaviors. We are often
biases,
aware
our
of
own beliefs.
Yes. We're not aware of how we're coming across. This is the classic intention action gap. You don't want to be known for your intentions, but the world knows you for your actions. It's the simplest possible thing to understand, but this is often what holds many people back. So you will never be judged for your intentions. You have to translate your intentions to action. And that will only happen by focused observation of what you're doing. In Indian philosophy, there is a concept of Sakshi Bhav. So Sakshi Bhav means I am detaching, stepping back and observing myself in action. That, will really give you insight into how you naturally react, what your triggers are, what your preferences are, what your instinctual responses are, and are they still serving you? Where are they based off of? So this focused observation is what I would recommend everybody to practice to get any meaning out of this work.
Absolutely. And for me, this focused observation hit me so hard, Priya, because I'm a huge fan of Marshall Goldsmith. And in the book Triggers, he comes with a very powerful equation of impulse, awareness, choice.
Yeah.
IAC equation, in which he spends multiple number of pages on expanding and explaining awareness bit. That's nothing but focused observation, right? And when I get that awareness through focused observations, then my choice to something that comes and hits me from the environment is very different as against a non-awareness based action that they give, right?
Awareness gives the energy to change.
It may go wrong, but this high possibility it will not go wrong.
Yeah. And what is right or wrong? It's just a different response to a situation to see, what that brings you, and then evaluate, where you'd rather be.
I know. Lovely.
Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, that's a lovely one. Thank you for that. I'm going to bring you to the next question, which is little, for me, a little lofted and difficult for leaders. But the author says that's almost like John Maxwell's fifth level of leadership to reach there. How do leaders who are successful and have been fairly doing well in their roles in teams and organizations move up and do this, which the author calls as surfacing their collective immunity to change, which is a huge phrase, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree with you that it does appear to be very lofty. It appears to be very complex. I don't have any personal experience with it. However, my thoughts around it when I read the book were, it's very easy for people to adapt an organizational identity in order to also do a little bit of blame shifting, do a little bit of, how do you say, projection on other people, saying in this organization, everybody does blah, blah, blah. That everybody includes me and I am part of that, everybody kind of gets eluded. So I also often wonder that if you do this in large groups with multiple leaders, would they ever agree what really needs to change? Because again, going back to that one big thing, the work for any consultant or practitioner in this area would really be to create an alignment on what is the one big thing that needs to change. And do we all agree that we are all party to it? We are all accountable for it. The rest of it becomes easy. But this piece, I think, will be, will be the toughest for any. The fearless inventory, the competing commitments, all of that people are clearer on because they're just contributing to that. But taking personal accountability for what is in column 1, I think will not may not happen until each of those leaders have had some personal experience with working with personal immunities.
I agree.
The concept of immunities, how to examine them, how to break them, unless they've had some confidence and success with that, I'm really curious to see how this would work when organizations try it. So in my chats with some practitioners around this, I have learned that the way to do this obviously is, to do, let's say, immunity work around leaders and their small teams first, and then, get to come together, perhaps look for common themes. But I haven't really seen this in action largely. So
yeah, pretty much you share the same view that I share on this.
Will be good to try that out, Rajiv, sometime. If you have success with that, do
If
try that and share
success,
that
one
with
case
me.
I'll share them with you, because I think maybe we have been successful in surfacing it at certain levels or heights, but I think we have defined it for ourselves that I want to reach it at that stage. Then I'll probably call it I've done it. Maybe I don't know. Uh, yeah.
So मुझे लगता है, there is a certain deference for hierarchy in our systems, and so therefore the higher up in the hierarchy you are, the more important it is for you to save face. So the vulnerabilities that are required, personal vulnerabilities that are required to be expressed to really be part of the team that is examining this, a little bit of work I think will need to get done on that. Like,
I agree.
I cannot close my eyes and imagine very many leaders would be very, very open to come together to do this work, and that it will happen at one shot. I think it will take some groundwork, for teams to get to that level.
I know we need very high level of maturity there.
Yeah. So again, when you read it in the book, it appears so easy. So chapter 7, that nascent technologies wala, the whole piece, it like you read through it and you're like, oh my God, we should do this tomorrow in our team. Like, this is so easy. But again, in defense of the book, it's simple, but it I think makes things overly simplistic. But as practitioners, we know a little bit of deeper work, maybe setting the groundwork would make those processes come alive better.
I agree. Lovely. Such a lovely conversation. I don't want to end this, but for constraint of time, I'm going to ask you the last question. So, with all that years of experience, Priya, that you have garnered in the consulting space, running your own organization, in the corporate space, coaching and mentoring, and all that work that you've done in the past, तो सबको अगर निचोड़ के फिर take a glass of wisdom, pull out 2 laser sharp advices that you would want to give to the young minds.
Only 2.
Go for 3.
So, staying with this context, for example, of, self-work, I think a commitment to self-work and a commitment to being non-judgmental about yourself is a very, very important capability to develop to keep learning as a leader. People grow, they want to freeze some models for their convenience. Again, that's how immunities get built. So, unfreezing yourself from that, staying in the learner zone and being judgment free around, so for example, biography of a big assumption, if you examine that, staying judgment free about that, is one advice that I would give everybody. Staying in that space is very, very important.
Lovely.
The second piece is that feedback will hit you from all directions, all the time, everywhere. And therefore, you can't dance around and change with every bit of feedback that hits you in all contexts. So staying true to your sense of identity, but having help in creating and forming that. What are you anchoring yourself for? I think developing and then redeveloping clarity about that from time to time is very, very important.
Oh, I love that point. Very
Don't wear a mantle all the time of saying, "Ye main hoon," but you're also unaware of "main kya hoon," because there's so much coming in, especially for the youngsters. It happens a lot. So developing a sense of true identity that is rooted in your values, that is examined from time to time, I think that is important to stay a lifelong learner.
Oh, lovely. I love the second one, Priya, honestly. That's so right. Holding on to that nucleus and still be open to pick up feedback from people and make those small twists and turns and changes, but still holding on to what you strongly believe. It kind of probably help that young mind to also work towards that excellence of theirs, right? In that one area, which is their most passionate thing that they want to do, and not just go astray, because वैसे भी distraction इतना सारा है. एक बोलता है यहाँ जाओ, एक बोलता है वहाँ जाओ, एक बोलता है पीछे जाओ. And the young mind is terribly confused कि मैं कहाँ जाऊँ.
Yeah. So authoring mind तभी बनेगा ना, when you're open to feedback, when you're not so hung up with who you are or what you become. So the balance of your being and becoming, keeping that in balance, या इतना become नहीं कर जाइए कि being भूल जाए आपका. और इतना being पे focus नहीं करिए कि become नहीं करें कुछ. So just keeping that balance, I think is very, very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Priya. That was a lovely, lovely conversation. Thank you for articulating this complex book in this 45 minutes of our chat and making it interesting for us. I completely enjoyed this conversation. I hope you also did. Thank you for coming on this event.
I did. Thank you. This is one of my favorite books. I hope this conversation can be helpful. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the book.
Anytime. Pleasure.
Thank
when
you.
Things open up and flights start flying, look forward to see you in your city.
All right. Sure.
All right. Till then,
Bye-bye.
enjoy time, and I'm waiting for the book to get out quick. And I know special courier being sent there that gets gifted lands into this office where I'm sitting, signed by the author herself. Right? Bye-bye. You have a lovely time.